Thank you for joining us. We apologize for being a few minutes late. We did meet in closed session. We have a quorum, so let's start with the pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
But I will. Okay, first thing on our agenda today is the approval of minutes for the December 18, 2017 business meeting and closed meeting, the January 22nd, 2018 special workshop meeting. Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from December 18th business meeting, December 18th closed meeting, January 22nd special workshop meeting.
Second.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Terrell Fuller?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka?
Aye, minutes carried. We're going to move on to the first reception of visitors. For time for public comment. The agenda includes 2 opportunities for comments from the audience. This first reception of visitors is intended for audience members to address the board about any agenda item on which the board will vote. Come on up. Realize that you are being recorded, and please give us your name.
Deanne Merrick. I again would like to speak to the voting for the plaque for Svoboda Hall. Last week in your discussion, it was brought up a little about, does anybody, is anybody still here? Does anybody remember? Whatever. Well, I texted one of my concert companions from back in the day, told her about tonight's meeting. And although she can't make it, I'd like to read to you what she did write back to me. She said, "Glad you are going to speak. He certainly made a difference in my life and in my appreciation for music and my understanding of how a group of pretty okay individual musicians could become an amazing orchestra, i.e. the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Thanks for going." So that's her take on what he meant in her life. And to piggyback the naming of something, it's not necessarily for how long he taught or how many lives he affected. I think it also goes to how much farther that even goes and how long into our lives he'd made a difference. I went back, I did most of my undergraduate work after the age of 40. I took a class in 2001, and we had to write an autobiography. That was one of our assignments, and I wrote mine. And there were guidelines, I kept them. And your high school opportunity or your high school experience was one of the things you were supposed to hit. And I did. I said I went to Downers Grove South, and I was a cheerleader, and I was on the gymnastics team and whatever. But I just want to read you the last of the high school year, the last sentence from the high school year, and the following, which is John C. Svoboda. That is a chapter in my autobiography. I wrote this 24 years after I graduated. The text I just got from my friend, that's 40 years after she graduated. So the last sentence in my high school years, hold on. My extracurricular activities, blah, 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 I told you about those. But it was my participation in the orchestra that most contributed to the development of my personal values and ethics. And then the next page, John C. Svoboda. The person chiefly responsible for this personal development was John C. Svoboda, our orchestra director, teacher, mentor, and friend. He truly worked miracles, inspiring us both to love and appreciate different kinds of music and to work harder to become better musicians. To accomplish this, he employed a variety of strategies. He had us practicing Sleigh Ride in August to ensure that we could play it confidently and crisply in December. He scheduled a field trip each year to Orchestra Hall in Chicago, making sure we had ample time to peruse the Art Institute, located directly across the street, before the concert began. He directed a summer music camp at Southern Illinois University, which some of us attended via the Amtrak train service. There he worked more miracles, as evident one year by our performance of Night on Bald Mountain and An American in Paris at a concert at the end of the 2-week camp. It took an extraordinary person to bring a group of this kind to that performance level in such a short time. This orchestra was composed of students with a wide range of ability levels, converging from many parts of the state. We had not previously played together, and most of the students had never worked with him. John Svoboda personifies a wonderful combination of patience, humor, seriousness, and encouragement, blended as beautifully as a Bach concerto. He set high but attainable goals, encouraged us to work hard to get there, and brought out the best in all of us along the way. Aristotle must have been smiling from ear to ear. So I do want to encourage you to vote for that sign. Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address the board? Hearing none, we'll move on to the recommendations and reports of the superintendent. Student fees.
First item is student fees. This is a yearly report and item that goes to the board, and Mark's going to take this one.
This one is pretty simple this year. You know, last 2016-17, we did a big reorganization of these fees. We increased some of the fees a little bit that year. We made some small increases last year, and some of them. And before one thing I'd like us to look at and give it one more year of experience with is the newer models of the Chromebooks, to see how those are working. We may be restructuring that fee if we do feel we can get 4 solid years out of the newer models. So I'd really like to wait and just do a change like that probably next year, if one's needed. Could be positive, could be negative, I don't know yet. And then, so I'd like us to take a pass on increasing fees this year. We don't have to do it every year. We don't do them every single year. So the recommendation from the administration, not for action tonight, but just for consideration, is to keep the fees constant. That's it.
Yay. Questions? Okay, quarterly financials.
Okay. Doing it all through a little bit of PowerPoint today, so we can go through a couple extra slides. So this is the revenues of the budget on the left and the bar and the actual. As you can see, this is typical of the mid-year. We typically have the majority of our revenues in. We don't typically have the majority of our expenditures in play at this point in the year. If we go to the revenues collected by source, you're going to see that we have property taxes, which are typically 100% collected because we get our largest payments in June of September, which is in our first half of our fiscal year. Other local is right about the same. The new or the unusual thing here is it's state aid, and I'll get into it in a little more detail, is 62% of budget. You got to keep in mind this is a cash basis a report. It's not on an accrual basis because the budget is really synced up to be on this basis. And we did receive all of our state aid from last year in terms of mandated categoricals, but we didn't get them until this quarter of this fiscal year, the first half of this fiscal year. So they were really late. In fact, we got them in the last quarter of the calendar year. So it's showing up in this report here. But there's also another change that I'll cover in a second here too. And that is, if we look at the revenues, 93% collected this year compared to 90% last year. The general and other state aid is the only thing that really jumps out at me. We're 62% collected compared to 22% collected last year. And a lot of that is timing, but there's also an unusual feature here in the state aid itself. The state, as you know, state of Illinois has gone to an evidence-based model formula with a hold harmless provision so that theoretically no school would get harmed and we would be able to keep our same state aid level as we received last year, but they also lumped into that some block kind of special ed funding for the most part, but some of it is also reimbursement type special ed funding. And so it increased the amount that's now called state aid and subject to the state aid rules. And so if we look at this, if you just look at the top line, last year our allocation was $2.3 million for general state aid. What they did is, though, they closed out these 4 special ed groupings and have now just called those state aid. So really, it's about $32,000 higher. Hank was telling me today, he was talking to state aid and evidence-based model stuff the last few days. And they think it's because there's a little bit of bilingual additional allocation for that it went up at all. But it's roughly the same amount, and it's going to stay like this. So our $4 million is now called General State Aid / EBM, Evidence-Based Model Funding, but it's subject to the rules of state aid. And state aid was one thing from the state that was required by statute to be paid on a schedule. It's an 11-month schedule, 2 times a month. They don't pay anything for July, but they pay 2 even payments for every month starting in August through the end of the fiscal year. And so now, with this being a higher value, we're going to get more funding. We're going to get these special ed things that we had to wait until months and months and quarters after. We're now going to get this on a more regular schedule. So the positive thing is here, we do have a bigger number to report right now, but it's just shuffling the money around to different pockets or from different pockets. But we will get it sooner. It will help scheduling for our cash flow and our investment placements. It'll help us just feel a little more comfortable about budgeting it. The downside, of course, is that it's probably going to stay at this level for up to 5 or 10 years. Because the promise is for the state to start pumping more money into the formula and hold us harmless. And until the poorest districts are brought up, and there's a lot of distance they need to be brought up, we're going to get, we're scheduled to get 1/10 of 1% of whatever they kick.
It's kind of like a TIF.
It's very low. Yeah, it's like the 23-year TIF that we typically jump into, right? So it's a kind of it's going to be flat. And one thing it's, I guess, I would say positive too, is that I've always budgeted for state revenue to be flat. I never promise or expect it to be higher. Usually, if there is an increase, there's some strings attached to it that add our costs as well. And sometimes it'll be hold harmless, and we'll probably still have some of those strings attached that make it actually go a little less further. So when you think of inflation, we're probably losing ground. We will be, but at least we know we're going to hopefully get this under in the fiscal year. So that's the good part of it. Jumping to the expenditure side, salary and benefits 43%, purchase services 52%. This is fairly normal. A little bit higher in some of those areas, and we'll see why. If you look at purchase services, we're about 10% further along. Supplies, we're a little bit further along, actually behind a little bit in capital outlay. But we've got 12 more attendance days. Remember, we moved our fiscal year up, and so we have 12 more attendance days. That's primarily, there's 3 areas that are going to be hit the hardest with that change. So when we do a comparison, we have to keep that in mind. We have a large number of support staff that work based on the school year. They're aides or supervisors, and so they follow the kids. So we have 12 more days of their salaries that are affecting this side. And we're just about the same in terms of salary and benefits. We're right about on the mark from last year. So I look at this as a positive. We're probably right on track for a budget this year. Purchase services would be busing and food service. Those are our 2 biggest purchase services. Those are following the kids. So it's really a 16% increase in number of days, but we didn't see any kind of a big jump in our expenditures. So I think those are positive, at least nothing that close to 16%. So we're feeling pretty good about the way the expenditure side looks. And then when we put it all together, this is the fund balance. You can see we're 2.5, roughly $2.5 million ahead. Primarily, it's the state funding catching up from last year, and then also because last year at this time we barely had any state funding coming in, and things are just running good right now. So it's a good story at the midpoint right now. We do have some we haven't even had a chance to talk, so Scott, I don't want to, but we do have the tuition coming in pretty hot right now, so it depends on what new kids coming into the district and how that could change. That could change things for us. But otherwise, everything is looking pretty solid, and it's a good mid-year report from my perspective. And that's it.
Questions?
Any questions, or?
My only question is now that it's going to be, stable, let's say we have more students coming in that need special services, are we going to be able to adjust that?
Well, the
that?
biggest cost is, if I can back up to it, the biggest one, the funding for children requiring special ed services is kind of a block grant. And so that hasn't changed much for us anyways, unless they put more money into it and allocate more to everybody. Special ed personnel reimbursements was reactive to the number of special ed staff we have, but that's going to be fixed now, so we will lose ground there.
Okay.
And the summer school and TPI, those were reimbursement type grants as well. So, yeah, I think we may lose ground on some of that if we get kids that move in. However, if it goes the other way, if more kids are served out or don't move in, it doesn't change or it goes down, that would help us. So,
Well, the reimbursement that we get for placement, if we have students that are placed out.
but outplaced are still offsite. That's a separate.
That's a separate.
Those are some additional special eds that are reimbursed.
Because that can be
fact,
very expensive,
The
so.
increase this year, we're like it just was in that warning, but mentioning about the uptick we have in outplacements and tuition students that are for special needs, we will still get reimbursement for those, assuming they
If we
funded
get
at the
it
same
anyway.
levels, or what percentage. I mean, it's not unusual for them to prorate that down to 75% of what they normally pay. More recently, it's been in the 90s, so it's been solid, and that will stay, those the reimbursements for outplaced kids will.
That's a different
That formula's
category.
still in place.
Okay, all right,
Yeah, they didn't take that one out.
okay, all right.
Is it, unless you learn anything new in the last couple of days, it changes sometimes,
No, the way that it will probably, in a couple of board meetings, give you an overview of the model that the state is using now that I'm understanding it more. Mark's been in quite a few training sessions on it. But yeah, Mark, as always, is absolutely correct with this, that special ed isn't a formula anymore. It's just built straight on enrollment. So a lot of these factors are built around what the model says a prototypical school needs based on the research. So very much to how we came and talked about how ESSA works, where it's a research-based model, and that's how accountability is going to work. The evidence-based model works very similarly. It's based on research as to what this model school would need based on research, and then resources flow through that model to determine what we should need.
So it's the average of like a 5,000 student school.
We're a
would have.
600 student school. Yeah, for high schools, they use a 600 student high school and then build the model around there and then scale it up based on the number of students that you have.
Okay.
How'd I do, Don? You've been giving those presentations too. Thanks.
Okay, anything else on the financials? Okay, thank you very much, Mark.
Thank you.
Moving on to summer school report and recommendations.
I'll turn this over to Gina.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Thiele. So we are here again, as we come every year, to talk about summer school. 2017 was at North High, and I have Tim Tilton, who is a dean at North High, who's been the director of summer school for 10 years. So he definitely knows what he's doing. He has this is a well-oiled ship, and he's going to share some information with us about summer of 2017, and then I will talk about recommendations for this upcoming summer.
Well, thank you for your time tonight. I'm happy to once again report that we had a successful summer school. At this time, I'd like to give a few highlights of the program. Summer school was held at North this year. For those of you not familiar, we alternate campuses for equity and distances, as well as being able to accomplish renovations and remodeling, things like that in different buildings. This is the first year that we did a 4-day school week with Fridays being off. Surveys confirmed that this was very favorable for both students and staff. We increased the school day length of the school day by 1 hour, so classes met from 8 until 2. With this additional time, we felt it was very important to have a lunch in there also, so there was a limited lunch menu that was available through the cafeteria there for all students and staff if they wished. So then the next three parts that I'd like to talk about for summer school are either the academic program, then the driver's ed program, and then our credit recovery program. Those are the three main portions of summer school here. So in our academic program, we had 244 students that were serviced. This was down slightly from 266 the year before. We were able to, we made a point to have paraprofessionals in every one of our math classes to assist the teachers. We felt that this was extra helpful in order to keep students focused and give assistance throughout the day. We were also able to have 2 proactive programs again this year. We had a very well-attended Freshman Bridge program. For those of you not familiar with Freshman Bridge, it's for some identified incoming freshman students who would benefit from both math and English preparatory for the rigors of both math and English. And then we also had a Keys to Academic Success class that students signed up for in order to gain study skills, organizational skills, note-taking, reading strategies for different curriculums, etc. We also had one more proactive program there with the AP Chem Prep. These are students that are planned to be taking AP Chemistry in the upcoming year, and they were coached on the rigors. This was a hybrid class where they worked both, they met 1 day a week for a few hours, then also did an online portion in order to get prepared for the upcoming AP Chemistry. Then we have our driver's ed program, and that was 48 students were serviced there. We were also able to successfully administer to 14 students the state behind the wheel waiver test that students, if they qualify and doing well enough, they can go ahead and take the test there with our certified instructors in order to have the behind the wheel test waived once they go to get their license. And then our credit recovery program. This is the program in which students are able to accomplish credits through the Ingenuity program, which is an online program credit recovery system. And we had 2 different times for student flexibility. Some students took it in the day during the summer school day, and then some students that were also in class during summer school but still wanted to accomplish some credit recovery classes after the school day was over at 2. Then there was a separate session after that in order to accommodate those. We had 35 students that were able to take advantage of this program, completing 44 different classes, and thankfully 9 students who would not have normally graduated, at the end of that school year were able to accomplish their high school diploma. So once again, this was a great combined effort, and I'd like to thank all the contributing members from all the departments and staff from both schools. Really helped summer school take place. So in a moment, Gina will talk about recommendations for the upcoming summer, but before that, are there any questions that I can answer?
I just have one question. It's kind of embarrassing. Did people actually take advantage of lunch? Was it worth having food service there?
Yeah, there were quite a few students, I would say, that ate lunch there. Some still continued to bring their own, but lunchtime was looked forward to time, and the food service did a great job of accommodating us a lot of times in short notice and trying to estimate the right amount of food and so forth, and so we got a pretty good system going.
Thank you.
And I'd like to say that Julie Etheridge was the one who facilitated that with our cafeteria. So she was great, and I appreciate all the help.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, recommendations?
Thank you.
So as the board knows, and pretty much we've done this for many years, we have a summer bridge program, as Tim said. We'd like to continue with that. That is funded completely through Title I. It is an intervention program, so we can use Title I funds to do that. I'd like to continue to do that. We also fund transportation through Title I. We've been doing that for several years, and that's fully funded. We also partially fund teacher salaries and our teacher aide salaries, our instructional salaries. We started bringing teacher aides on about 3 years ago. And then we've even double manned with teachers some of our math classes, really putting a lot of focus on the math classes to really get the students to pass, but not just pass, be prepared for the next level. So I'd like to continue to do that. I'm recommending a summer school teacher stipend increase per semester from $2,873 to $2,933 per semester. That's based on 2.1 CPIU, and then also based on the 2.1%, the director stipend increase as well. So 4 recommendations, funding transportation and partial salaries, summer bridge, and then the salary increase based on CPIU for both the teachers and the director.
And those recommendations will come back for action next month.
Any questions, discussions?
Couple. With the students that fail, are there further interventions for them? What happens to those students?
It depends on the course and the student. In some cases, if they don't take summer school, they'll just double up the next year, which happens for some students. Some, as Tim said, will do credit recovery. It just varies. Most of the interventions are occurring so students do not fail. So this is really more about recouping.
I get it. I noticed that there were a few Fs up
Yes.
there in each category. I wonder what happens with those students.
A lot of them will double up.
And then the fact that that the total enrollment continues to decline, I can see that as being a good thing, possibly. Or so just
Kind of a
wonder
double-edged sword.
your take on that. Yeah.
It's true, it is a double-edged sword because then we might have more students doubling up. I mean, over the years in general, our failure rate has come down in some
Right.
key courses, but not in all courses. And we certainly want freshmen to be on track, as Dr. Seeley said. With ESSA, that's a goal of ours. So it's very important that students are on track. So we're putting more interventions in place before we get to that point. But if they don't take summer school with us, there are some other options not too many students take advantage of. For example, COD offers a summer school program, but we don't have many students typically that take advantage of that. Students can transfer in a credit, a couple of credits actually, alternative type credit, but very rarely do we have that in situations where students are recouping credit.
What percentage of our students would you say are incoming freshmen?
That are in summer school?
Yeah.
Maybe we have the math one.
I don't think that's in the report, but we could pull
Yeah,
it.
we'll have to check.
Yeah, we can report it back out next month.
Gene, I have a question, and I ask it every year. And it seems like we look at summer school for the kids to get caught up. Why can't and don't we look at summer school for the kids to get ahead and knock out something so that a requisite so they could then tap into an AP class a little earlier in their career, or potentially hit a different area that they may not be able to get to because of the fact that we don't offer any honors courses in the summer to get ahead or accelerate to get to that AP level.
Most of our summer school courses are for recouping, with the exception of Math 1. We do have students who will take Math 1 over the summer, primarily those that come to us from our private schools, where they do algebra, and they'll come in and take the second semester so they can get a year ahead.
Most of the grade schools are doing Math 1.
The public schools
Yeah.
are. But a lot of our main feeder, particularly the Catholic schools, they still teach algebra. That's diocesan rule. So those students, some of them will come in the summer and they'll do Math 1. Usually only semester 2 because they have enough. And then they will be able to project a year ahead. We have not focused summer school in part because of the shorter time frame. We haven't really focused it on that to get students ahead. We've done more with the enrichment to try and prepare students for that next step. And we've run a couple of things, and not all of them have been successful. We've tried with a word language bridge we had at one time for Spanish. We've tried a couple of different options, but we don't always, even in the enrichment, get the enrollment.
Well, Rick, I have had a personal situation recently that my family could have benefited from exactly what you're suggesting, and we weren't able to do something, and I'm wishing we could have.
I bet there's a clientele out
so-
there that would take advantage of
Yep,
it.
yep. I don't know, is it a funding thing? Just not enough time in the summer to be able to adequately teach such a class?
It's definitely more condensed in the summer. It's definitely more condensed. I mean, we have had some students, but it hasn't been the focus of summer school.
Because these probably would be our better students. These would be,
Enrichment
these
students.
would be the gifted, accelerated students, and they could handle a faster pace because they would be those motivated, driven students.
Or,
And we've,
or you could have courses that were required and that would free them up in the semester, in the regular semester for a
Sure.
more difficult class.
Yeah.
or an elective.
Or
depending.
an
Like
elective,
elective, yeah.
you
We've
know.
offered some, we've
I'm
tried to
thinking-
with consumer ed,
Yeah.
and students do that with driver's ed too. They
You know,
want to take it in the summer.
The one thing that comes to mind for me is that whole concept of getting to college credit classes in high school. So I see that being a benefit, especially if it's something, I know math is rigorous, so it may not get you that foundation you need to go to the AP. However, there's probably other classes that you guys are so good at that will be a fit to kind of help bridge into some of those college
You know,
level
yeah.
classes.
Maybe an English class or, you know, something like that, that you know that that's a prerequisite for almost
like
everything in
An honors
college.
chem, and then with the consent, that then you would take AP Chem, which it's the same material, just at a different level.
And we've had conversations, actually.
I know, every year I ask
Every year.
this, yeah.
But my concern is with, meeting the needs of the curriculum to prepare students for AP Chem. But I can definitely revisit it with them.
Just to follow up on the percentage of freshmen, some of that, so what I'm kind of interested in is it a large number? Because if it is, then that's maybe a bit of a concern, and I'm wondering, then I start to wonder where those students are coming from.
So clarifying question, are you talking about freshmen going into sophomore year?
No,
Incoming freshmen?
incoming.
Because the majority of our incoming freshmen will be in the summer bridge.
That's what I'm,
And we've actually, we just finished, we gathered the data every year on how those students who are in bridge do the following semester, and actually, even the second semester in the courses that are next. So for them, it'll be their foundations, math or Math 1S, or it would be our Read 180 program or English 1. And we just finished looking at 3 years of data. We've decided to hone in on those students that are going into our foundations math course. So it'll be interesting this year to look at the data because it may be slightly different. But the vast majority of our incoming freshmen are in our summer bridge program.
which is how large?
How many did we have?
We had about 33, I believe, 32, 33 students.
Is that pretty spread out amongst our partner districts? Or do we see some concentration in one versus another that maybe we need to be doing more with them ahead of time before they're even getting here?
It's an invite program only because students have to meet the criteria. So it's not that they necessarily publicize it. We actually send out letters. For example, next Saturday actually a few days, what am I saying? When we have-
Fast,
It's just
right?
coming
Yeah.
so quickly. When we have freshman registration,
Yep.
these students will be given the information. So those students that meet the criteria will be given the information then, which is earlier than we've done it in the past few years. We used to do it that way years ago, and then as the board knows, I struggled to get math teachers. So we kind of held off to make sure that we have staff in place. We've been in a good place the last, 2 years now with math teachers, so keeping my fingers crossed. So we should be okay. So I think notifying them a little earlier too will help with vacations. And I think the Fridays will probably help now that word is out. The survey
So-
data was definitely.
So I know that we work hard to identify those students so that they can get into this because they need it. Where I was coming from was, I don't want to pick on any one school, but can we use this information in order to better target something that's happening in 8th grade someplace to help them so that they don't need to do this?
So we do articulation, and we talk about those students and where they're being placed, and we work with the junior highs on that. So there's definitely a lot of communication that occurs between not just administration, but the department chairs as well as those schools. And we do see higher numbers from certain schools.
And has that been historically, or
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'd still be interested in
Yeah.
freshman and sophomore year numbers.
Okay, so freshmen, sophomore as well. I'll just do the 4-year breakdown.
Yeah, we can bring that back with the action item next month.
Great.
Thank you.
Anything else? Otherwise, we'll move on to staffing ratio. Thanks, Tim. Staffing ratio?
Okay, staffing ratio, I'll turn this over to Pete.
All right, so in the memo here, I tried to give you a little bit of the background behind where we've been in the past, using CASARDA as a guide for us with our enrollment. The staffing allocation for this current year is 21.8 to 1. And then I tried to show you what our numbers are showing us that we currently have registered as incoming 9th graders, our current 9th, our current 10th, our current 11th. So Tony, if you go to the next chart for me at the top there. So this year is our 6th year in a row of using the 21.8 to 1 ratio. We're recommending that we continue that for a 7th year. I show you a little bit about the CASARDA numbers versus what we are seeing in the building and in the buildings. And so if you scroll just a little bit more, Tony, you can see here in the middle that we are recommending to the board that we continue the 21.8 to 1 ratio and that we staff it at the 230.6, which is based on our current enrollment projections for next year, based on what we already have registered in our system. And then as a reminder, we have other things that we'll be bringing to you at the February business meeting for some of the other staffing needs below the line in terms of that chart that we'll bring back out for you. So this is not the only staffing that we will be doing, but we need your recommendations so that the buildings can get started on the work that they need to do in looking at how many sections of each course they're going to run, which courses they're going to run, and start that whole process of getting all the students scheduled in time for next year. So this is strictly that kind of above the line FTE allotment. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
Thanks, Pete.
Okay, thanks.
Did we get some freedom of information requests?
We did. We had 7 filled and responded to.
Thank you. Okay, for this portion of the agenda, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. This is an opportunity for any board member to remove any item for further discussion. I would like to remove items E and F. Does anybody else want to remove any items?
No, do we need to have a motion?
We need a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion for Board of Education to approve the consent agenda as presented, which includes A, personnel report, appointment certified, leave of absence certified, leave of absence classified, appointment classified, B, personnel report, resignation administration, resignation classified, retirement classified, C, financial pages, D, approval of concussion oversight team, E and F you wanted pulled, correct?
Right, correct, thanks.
G, approval of facility naming request, North High High School. H, closed session minutes and verbatim recordings. I, approval of student tour.
Thank you.
I second.
Terry seconds.
Thank you. Ruth Pavanato.
Aye.
Troy Pavasich.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion passes. Thank you. You got your room. Okay, I pulled 2 items from the consent agenda simply because I wanted to call them out. First is the acceptance.
In a good way, right?
In a very good way. In an extremely grateful and good way.
Yeah.
You have me worried there.
It was the right thing to do.
Yeah.
First is the acceptance of a donation from the Downers Grove Juniors Women's Club. The Downers Grove Junior Women's Club has voted to contribute $5,000 raised at their annual fundraising event in October to our District 99 Student Assistance Program for both North and South Highs, planned to use these funds primarily to provide financial assistance for students to attend our snowball events each year. Thank you so much to the Women's Club. We really appreciate this donation and show of faith. And then the second thing I wanted to call out in a very good way was that the Brett Hauer family has offered to make 2 very generous donations to North High for auditorium improvements. This would fund much-needed changes in lighting, and the administration recommends accepting the donations, which total around $27,000. So again, another big thank you out to a family in the community. We really appreciate this. We would be remiss not to recognize it. Anything you'd like to add?
No, we're excited about the snowball donation, so that's
Oh,
awesome.
yeah. It's a great thing, and it's just so wonderful that so many people have stepped forward to help us.
And I will add to the Breath Hour donation, one of the things that, the reason this comes to the board for approval is obviously to recognize those that are making the donations, but so that the board has the opportunity to ensure that there's equity in these kinds of donations across both sides of town.
Okay.
And one of the things we talked about quite a bit amongst the administrative team was, if this donation comes in to North High, how does it impact the equality of facilities on the south side of town, right? Because you don't want to end up with differences between the two. Because of the fact that the North Auditorium is much different than the South Auditorium, the equipment that we're putting in at North wouldn't work at South. South's lighting and structures are completely different. This actually, assuming that the community supports the master facility plan, protects North from falling behind South should that happen and South get a new auditorium. So it's almost a proactive measure to make sure that North can stay on par with the improvements that may come at South. But they are such different facilities that they're already inequitable. South, we're meeting all of their lighting needs already based on what they have.
Yeah.
This would make sure that North's lighting needs were met as well.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. Anything else? Not, we need a motion.
I move that we accept the donations from the Downers Grove Junior Women's Club and the donation from the Brett Hauser family.
Second.
Thank you.
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries, and a big thank you.
Just
Go
to
ahead.
clarify, the motion was that we accepted the donation from the Brett Hauer family, but also to direct the district to match the donation, correct?
Correct.
Do we need to tweak that
Oh,
motion? Or,
What's in there?
I didn't see that in the motion.
It's, yeah, in the memo, there's a matching amount for that second portion of the donation,
Just the 15,000.
the
right?
15,000, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
do you want a motion for that, or?
Well, I'm okay if you're all okay, now that we've clarified that. If anybody has any concerns, now would be the time to let us know, but
Well, it was before the vote.
we can always undo it and redo it.
Yeah,
If everybody's comfortable moving forward, we can just move forward, but
I'm fine with it.
Fine.
I'm fine with it. Thanks for
the
clearing.
administration is comfortable with providing those funds.
Match it. Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted.
Okay, moving on. Recommendations for action, approval of the staffing ratio for the 2018 to 19 school year.
This is approval of what Pete just presented.
I move the Board of Education approve the staffing ratio for the 2018-2019 school year as presented.
Second the motion.
Mike Davenport?
Aye.
Dan Nicholas?
Aye.
Terry Pavasich?
Aye.
Rick Pavanato?
Aye.
Don Renner?
Aye.
Cheryl Fuller?
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. The next item of business before the Board of Education is the consideration of a resolution abating the tax heretofore levied for the year 2017 to pay to pay debt service on the general obligation bonds or alternate revenue sources, Series 2011 of the district.
And this is a standing agenda, yearly agenda item that's been here for a while. I'm going to turn this over to Mark for explanation.
This is for a 2011 project. We're actually kind of a predecessor step to the master facility plan, and that a good portion of this work was to replace the domestic water lines at the south campus, as well as update the boilers, and also ready that campus for the air conditioning in terms of some of the internal structure. While we had the walls open to do the piping for the boilers, we said, let's plan to the future and expect that someday we'll air condition this building. And we put in the piping necessary to do that. We went from a steam-based boiler into a water-based system, which is now going to be able to work with the air conditioning when we flip it. So we're really pleased that that's maybe coming to some effective use. But this is done with operating funds. It's about $1.3 million each year of the total amount that we use for debt service out of our operating funds, rather than issuing taxes for this. So issuing debt service taxes. So it's something we're proud of that we've done internally. And now that you saw the general state aid go from $2 million to $4 million, there's more than enough money in the state aid pipeline. And as long as there's adequate money in the state aid, we have to, and we should, abate the bonds. Because otherwise, if that were to fall apart and we got zero state aid and very little replacement taxes, we would have the authority to issue debt service bonds. But we won't need to, and we're very happy we don't have to.
Any questions?
No, I just like to highlight this every year. I mean, this is something we have the authority to issue bonds to pay for these things, and since 2011, we have not, and we abate this every year, and it's something that we very well could have had to go to if the state aid money wasn't there, if things had gotten cut. But this is only possible with great financial management on the part of the district to be able to do this sort of thing and not have to raise people's taxes to do it. So thank you.
So Mike, are you making a...
I am making a motion to approve the resolution.
Making a resolution abating the
Yes.
tax heretofore. Do you have it there?
Yeah, heretofore levied for the year 2017 to pay debt service on general obligation bonds, alternative revenue source, Series 2011 of Community High School District 99, DuPage County, Illinois.
Thank you.
I second that.
Thank you.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Rick Cavanado.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
Aye, motion carries. Last, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there was a flourish of your pen.
I just drew a line. Yeah, next item.
I'm ready to make this motion. This next one's a good one.
I'm a cheap date. Okay.
Everybody wants this motion.
Now, I know with the tear in my eye,
The motion.
we need a motion to see if we can cancel the February 5th, 2018 special workshop meeting.
Go ahead, Mike.
We had a few,
I will
I didn't even
note,
finish.
I would like to note that my team worked diligently to move up a couple of items to tonight, to get them done in a timely fashion last week so that we could move them off of the workshop next week and then just bring them back in February. So thank you, team.
Thank you.
Thank you. I move the Board of Education approve the cancellation of the February 5th, 2018 special workshop meeting.
Second. I figured he deserved to do this. He's been to way more board meetings.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Sherelle Fuller.
Aye.
Dan Nicholas.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Rick Cavanado.
Aye.
Don Renner.
Aye.
And Nancy Kupka.
aye, motion carries, surprisingly. Moving on to the second reception of visitors. This is the second reception of visitors, which is intended for audience members to address the board on any topic pertaining to Community High School District 99. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board?
I do.
You have to state your name again, and I have to tell you
That's
being
right.
recorded again.
Deanne Merrick again. I'd like to speak to the PE exemption that you were talking about last week. And as far as the gentlemen who were here speaking that the varsity players put in more time than the underclassmen, I disagree with that. I've had 8 athletes go through your programs, and while they may not be on the field for that postseason play, if it's a sport that goes into postseason, you can be sure that those underclassmen are there running scores. They are expected to be out in the stands cheering their upperclassmen teammates on. They put in maybe not 100%, but 98 or 99% of the same hours that those varsity players put in. So, and then on the flip side to that was the reason that we don't allow all 9th and 10th graders exemptions for their sports is because, according to the gentleman that spoke, was because the information that's provided during PE time during those 2 years is so vital to the students. Well, if it's vital for freshman and sophomore on the freshman teams, and it's vital for those on the sophomore teams, and it's vital for those on JV teams, then I'm pretty sure it must be vital for those on the varsity squad too. So I'm not in favor of any, according to, if that information is true, that what they're providing our students 9th grade and 10th grade in PE class, if that is so important, then I think they should all be there for it. And piggyback to that, I also think they're spending as much time as varsity players at the lower levels at their sports. So that, to me, that's a double whammy to keep them in class. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, moving on, we'll talk about some of our communications and announcements. Is there any report on Lund?
Yeah, we held a meeting last Friday. Got a report about the governor's veto of legislation to clean up the evidence-based model. That's sort of put a kibosh on the legislation that would clear up some issues with the PTEL interaction with the EBM. So we don't know where that's going. It looks like that is not going to be moving forward anytime soon. So a little disappointed in that regard. Hank's working on dual credit, and Hank, if you want to give a report on that.
Sure. There's a meeting tomorrow of the small task force. I'm presenting on the evidence-based model tomorrow, so I won't be at that meeting. But I've did my homework for them over the weekend and reviewed all that material. Next Monday, I'll be out of the office because I'm going down to Springfield to work with that small focus group and a group of legislators to begin the early groundwork for advocating for changes in how dual credit works in the state of Illinois. So starting to make some progress on it. At least progress on the plan of what we advocate for with our legislators.
Start.
It's nice to have an in-house leader on that group, too.
Yes. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
SACID, School Association for Special Education, DuPage County. Last week on Wednesday, we had the Board of Control and the Governing Board meetings. We've made some tweaks to some of their benefit structures to bring their non-unionized staff in line with their unionized staff. And then they anticipate making $1.5 million worth of upgrades into their spaces, and are going to be able to take that out of their existing monies, but they're going to have to refill that coffer. So they will be passing on the cost to on a per head basis over the next 10 years, depending on the number of students. They're going to break it out, and it'll be per student per year for 10 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
District 99 Education Foundation?
Yeah, we're doing a few things. And just a recap of 2017, the gifts that the foundation gifted was over $20,000
Wow.
in support of educational programs at North and South. A few of the highlights were Young Hearts for Life, the Chris Herron speaker at Red Ribbon Week. I'll say that fast 3 times. And then we also supplied the Raspberry Pi devices for the kids in the STEM club. And our year-end fundraising campaign, we sent out letters and emails to our database and alumni lists, and we raised $2,525. So that was our first time ever, so we figure hopefully it'll increase as the years go on. And it also provides a opportunity for people to join the foundation and serve their community. And if you would like to join the board, you can contact us through the D99EF.org website or Julia Beckman. And our teacher and learning grants, we are now accepting applications, and teachers have the opportunity to submit their applications by April 1st for our next round of grant, and that is through email on the foundation website. And then make sure you make your reservations for Pizza Wars. That is coming up on Thursday, March 1st. And it's at South High Cafeteria from 5:30 to 8. The tickets will be available starting February 1st on the foundation website, which is www.d99ef.org. And be sure and purchase tickets.
The ticket cost is?
I believe it's $10 ahead of time and $12 at the door.
Thank you.
And if you've never been to Pizza Wars, it's well worth the money.
Yes, and you got to get your reservations in early because I have a feeling it's going to fill up fast because we do have a limited amount of space. And so far we've got 8 pizza vendors this year. So it will be fun.
Any new ones?
Yes, there will be some new ones. So
Good.
we will have an opportunity to, because there are some pizza parlors that are not with us anymore.
So it's part of the fun of the event is getting to try things you haven't tried before. And, you discover
And
something.
usually, I mean, when we set the parameters originally, you know, each pizza vendor was to bring their signature pizza, one. It seems like they didn't quite get that memo. And they bring several different ones. So we will see what they have to offer us this year.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just another example, though, too, of a lot of committed people doing a lot of work and just community involvement and all the people who are so gracious to us.
Oh, absolutely. Our pizza vendors, they provide the pizza at no cost to us. So it is a major investment for them.
And they send staff.
And they send their people. And we also use our students, too. AVID, which we provide a scholarship for North and South High. And so they provide us students to help with that too. So National Honor Society usually helps us, and Key Club, a lot of
I come eat every
organizations.
year.
Yeah.
You know.
That's right. Me too.
Yeah. And you come hungry because usually
Lot of food.
no one walks away hungry afterwards. So it's a good time for everyone.
And that's March.
March 1st, Thursday, 5:30 to 8
Thank you.
in the South High Cafeteria.
And there are no finals this year,
Right.
No.
so hopefully more students will show up.
And hopefully the weather will be good. So
It's March in Chicago, who knows?
it's March winds.
Never know.
Yeah.
Mike, do you have anything on Illinois Association of School Boards?
Yeah, so the DuPage district meeting's coming up on March 6th, so let Julie know if you want to attend.
Yeah. I'm going.
Upcoming board meetings, February 5th is now canceled. We need to make sure Simone and Prevail get an email. Can you do that? Thank you. And then, so we will have our next meeting on February 26th, the regular business meeting here at 7:30 PM.
Nancy, before we move to adjourn, I just had one comment. Maybe it's something for a parking lot. But I coach basketball on the weekends, and that's at the rec center for the Park District. And I just noticed this, I think it was this past weekend, was the first time, there's a big bank financial sign in the full court. And I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm just curious if maybe Hank or somebody from our district could contact the Park District, and I'd like to know what kind of arrangements going on there, and just get a report. I'm not advocating that we pursue that. I'm just curious. I think this was a subject that was talked about before I joined the board.
Yes.
I'm curious too.
I'd just be interested to know a little bit more about it.
Can we take that back? So before your time, there was a lot of discussion about getting people in the community to name Karstens Field or name the South Field or
No,
putting
it's
advertising
Actually, this is
up.
more about putting advertising.
Yeah,
in the-
advertising or putting up a new scoreboard or whatever, and there was a lot of discussion about that.
Letting somebody underwrite the cost of a scoreboard or
Yeah.
things, put up banners around the fences and things like that.
Pepsi
I've seen it at
Others.
Ensdale Central, their football
South.
field, they have advertising.
Is
Yeah.
that based on, I'm just logging the meeting, is that based on them paying to be recognized in our community?
Yeah,
so.
it's probably just like US Cellular Field, or what is it now, rate down, guaranteed rate field, and
Yeah.
So sure you
But
can
it was everything from naming the field to your point, having a sign on the, and so
Okay.
maybe it's time to revisit.
So I just want to get consensus from the board as to what you're looking for. It sounds like Donna's brought up, we have somebody else in the community doing this with the Park District. Are you looking for just for that sign, or what kinds of arrangements they have, or?
I'd like to know more information about that specific arrangement with Park District. I've noticed Hensdale Central, when I drive down 55th, their football field, I think it's Adidas.
Yeah, Hinsdale South, you've got things all around their field.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
So that's, I'm just trying to get some direction as to what the board would like for us to go out and research. Is it a single, or are you looking for what school districts in the area have for their policies and practices? I mean,
I'd like to know
what are
their
you kind of
policy.
looking for, so I come back with the right kind of thing? And I also want to make sure that the overall board as a whole, remember you work together to tell me what to do, is okay with whatever is being asked for.
I would like their policies.
Policies, yeah.
I think that's the place to start, other school districts.
Yeah, their policies and what
Yeah.
results they've seen
Yeah.
from
Yeah,
doing
I'd
that.
sure like to know finances.
We have a policy committee set for next Monday.
Yes, we do.
We can at least pull what our policy is for the policy committee and maybe what press has in it and start there. We can pull, at least talk to the local park district and see what they're doing and start to investigate. But why don't we start with policy committee and look at what our policy is and at least consider press, and then we can gather a little bit of data to bring back to the board at a later time.
My assumption too, and I know you're going to get all this figured out, is that these things, because I haven't paid attention to that, change over time. Like they're up a month, or
I don't know.
you don't know.
Depends
Okay.
on what the board's policy is.
What the policy is.
Yes.
One thing I had brought up before is in the gym, you could have some sort of a video board that allows for you to put advertising on it during a game if somebody, for lack of a better description. So it doesn't even have to be something permanent, but this all came about in previous discussions regarding alternative revenue streams and opportunity that's there that other people take advantage of, and we haven't for good reasons in the past, but.
Well, if we
it's
got a
new board, so-
jumbotron, maybe we could put
It's
advertising.
an electronic
I
sign.
like the idea.
Well, yeah, we've got to get the electronic sign out front, so I'm still all for that.
All right, we'll start next week with the policy committee. We'll do a little bit of homework and see what we can find out, especially with the local park district.
Anything else? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
I'm going to second Terry's motion to adjourn.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.